Well, all right, now we get to do what I like to do best, factoring trinomials. So we've got x squared minus 11x plus 30. So let's talk about some technique here. Well, I know I'm going to have two parentheses, okay? Because I'm going to have two factors. And I see that my lead coefficient is positive 1, and I've got a positive term here and a negative term here. So since my lead coefficient is 1, I can go ahead and put an x on the left side of each parentheses. And again, since this is positive and this is negative, I can go ahead and put in negative signs in here. Because when I multiply two negatives together, when I do my last term when we FOIL, a negative times a negative is going to be a positive. And when I add two negatives together, well, it's going to be negative. And so I'm looking for two numbers, let's say, that are going to multiply to 30 and add to negative 11. Well, let's see, 30 and 1, that's not going to work. 15 and 2, that's not going to work. But 5 and 6 is going to work. 5 and 6. So negative 5 and negative 6. Well, negative 5 times negative 6 gives me 30. And negative 5 plus negative 6 gives me negative 11. So I can just put a 5 and a 6 inside my parentheses here. And we're off and running. All right, let's see. If I wanted to FOIL that back, I got x times x is x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times negative 6 is plus 30. Combine the like terms, and the negative 5x and the negative 6x gives me negative 11x. We got it factored. I FOILed it back just to prove it to myself, although I didn't write it down. But you heard the explanation. Now I'm going to set each factor equal to 0, like we've now become accustomed to doing. And we're going to solve for x, and that is going to be our real zeros, our roots, our solutions, our x-intercepts. And so x is going to equal 5, and x is going to equal 6. And our solution is 5 and 6. All right, well, let's look at another one. We got about 4 we're going to go through here. All right, so here I've got an x squared minus 4x minus 21. And again, I'm going to set up my two parentheses. We'll go ahead and just draw those out. I've got an x squared with a lead coefficient of 1, so I can put x on the left-hand side, xx. All right, so this time I've got a negative 21 and a negative middle term. I've got a negative last term and a negative middle term. And so I know that inside my parentheses, I'm going to have a plus and a minus. And that's because when I multiply in my last term, if I got a positive and a negative, I can have a negative number. And so kind of like before, but a little bit different, I'm looking for two numbers that can multiply to negative 21 and then add to negative 4. Okay, let's see, 21. Well, 21 and 1 doesn't work. Well, 3 and 7. Okay, 3 and 7. Well, 3 times 7 is 21. I got to figure out which one's got to be negative. But they got to add to negative 4. So if I have negative 7 and positive 3, those two will multiply to negative 21 and then add to negative 4. So I can have x plus 3 and x minus 7. All right, well, that's good. And again, we're going to set both of these factors equal to 0. Solve for x. So x is going to equal negative 3, and x is going to equal positive 7. And so my two solutions are negative 3 and 7. Well, Shazam. Now, on this one, we got a little bit of different wrinkle. My constant is just 1. And that kind of helps me in this. We're going to see a little bit later how it can get a little bit testier when I've got a coefficient greater than 1, like we do here with 15x squared, lead coefficient. And if our constant is something other than 1. But this kind of helps me a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and draw my two parentheses. So I've got a positive 15. I know I'm going to have an x towards the left-hand side, but I'm going to leave room for accounting for that 15, that lead coefficient. And I can see that I've got a positive third term and a negative middle term, which means that inside my parentheses has got to be negative, negative, because I'm going to end up multiplying. When I do the last terms, I'm going to multiply two negatives together. That would give me a positive, but when I add those, it's still going to be negative. And so in a way, this is very similar in that I'm looking for, well, I know over here it's got to be 1 and 1. Negative 1 times negative 1 is going to give me positive 1. So I've just got to figure out what am I going to put as a coefficient in front of these two x terms. And I need two numbers that are going to multiply to 15 in this case and add to negative 8. And again, 15 and 1 I know is not going to work. But then I got 3 and 5. Well, 3 and 5. Well, and I'll be multiplying by negative 1. So 3 and 5, and all that's got to be multiplied by negative 1. So we're going to go 3x and 5x. 3x minus 1 times 5x minus 1. Let's test that back. 3x times 5x is 15x squared. That looks good. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x. Negative 1 times 5x is negative 5x. Negative 3x and negative 5x is going to add to negative 8x. And negative 1 times negative 1 is going to give me 1. I believe I've got it. And again, we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. Going to get really used to setting each factor equal to 0 and solving for x. We're going to add 1 to both sides on this left-hand equation. So I got 3x equals 1. And let's see, we're going to divide by 3. And so x is equal to 1/3. That's one of our roots. We're going to set the, now I'm going to tackle the second part of this. So I got 5x minus 1. We're going to add 1 to both sides. So 5x equals 1. Divide both sides by 5. And x equals to 1/5 or 1 over 5. And my solution is 1/3, 1/5. I probably should write it the other way around since 1/5 is smaller than 1/3. I think I'll do that. We'll just say 1/5 since it's the smallest number. 1/3. Okay. All right, we got one more, and it's a little bit testier. And we got to be thinking. Sometimes you can use trial and error. But let's look at what we've got. We got negative 12x squared plus 8x plus 15. Well, negative 12, 8, both of those are divisible by 4, but 15 is not divisible by 4, so I don't have any greatest common factor that I can take out. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and set up my two parentheses. I know that inside my parentheses, my operation has got to be pluses, positives, because that's a plus and that's a plus. So in here, I got to have a plus, plus. Now, there's a method called slide and divide, and I don't really use it very much, so I probably just don't teach it very well. But I take this coefficient, this 12, negative 12, and 15, and I would multiply those two together. Let's see, and that's going to give me 180, or actually negative 180. And I'm going to have to factor that 12, but I'm also looking for something that's going to add to 8. All right, well, let's see. Let's focus first on two numbers that would multiply to 180. Well, 18 and 10. 18 and 10 would multiply to 180, and if I subtracted those, I'd get to 8. And I'm going to have to deal with this negative on this 12. So one of my coefficients here has got to be negative. All right, so then I can take the 12, the negative 12, I should say, and divide it into 18 first and then 10. So let's see. Well, I guess first I need to think about the factor tree on this. I think 12 and 1 is going to give me too large of a number, but 4 times 3 does equal 12. So let's see what we can do here. I think this will work. All right, well, the 3 will go into 18 6 times, and the 4 will go into the 10. Well, I could end up with 5 over 2, couldn't I? 10 over 4, yeah, it would be 5 over 2. So I think I got to deal somehow with a 6 and a 2. Oh, that should be a 3. 3 will go into. Oh, wait a minute. 4 and 3 is not going to work. So I got to do some trial and error. I see it now. 6 and 2. 6 times 2 equals 12. Those 6 will go into 18 3 times. 2 will go into 10 5 times. Okay, so I got the 3 and the 5. I've got to have a positive. So I need a 6. I think if I use a positive 6x and a negative 2x. Now let's think about the 3 and the 5. Where was the best place to put that? I think if I did a plus 3 here and a plus 5 here, I think that would work. Let me test this. Negative 2x times 6x is negative 12x squared. That checks that. Negative 2x times 5 is negative 10x. 3 times 6x is 18x. So 18x minus 10x is going to give me the 8x. That cuts that out. And then 3 times 5 is equal to 15. Like I say, I don't really use the slide and divide method, so it's a little bit, I just do more trial and error, which I kind of did anyway, even with the slide and divide. One reason why I don't use it is the students that I've seen that have been taught it, they always hesitate when they're doing slide and divide, and by that time you can do trial and error. All right, but now that we got this, we're going to set each factor equal to 0. Like I said, this is a little bit more testy in terms of its factoring. And 6x plus 5, I said equals 0. 6x plus 5 equals 0. We're going to solve for x. So I got negative 2x now is equal to negative 3. And I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. And so I got negative 3 divided by negative 2, which is just going to give me 3 halves, or 3 over 2. The two negatives are going to make it positive. Dividing a negative number by a negative number is going to yield a positive number. And then we got 6x. Going to subtract 5 from both sides. That gives me negative 5 over here. We're going to divide by 6, and we got negative 5 over 6. And so our two solutions, our two zeros, our two roots are negative 5 over 6 and 3 halves. Let me make a little better 6 there. All right, well, there you go. That was quite a bit. But hey, it's math and it's fun.